Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei didn't have boosted gear? Part 1. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Raynare threw her holy spear at Issei. It was flying towards him at a terrifying speed, ready to pierce through him. She had planned to end his life. And Rias had planned to reincarnate him into her peerage, but not a single thing ever goes as planned. As the spear flew towards the poor boy, time seemed to slow down, almost stop. The boy saw his life flashing before him. He was aware of it. This was the end for him. Maybe this was for the best, he thought. All he could do properly is be a pervert. He was about to accept his demise when a powerful voice screamed through his mind. You dare give up? What a useless human you are. You're not worth the air you breathe. Fine, I'll handle this, you little worm. And with that, a golden light covered his entire body. The spear, made out of holy energy, would crumble as it made contact with the light before dissolving into nothingness. What happened? She asked, shock covering her features. She wasn't sure what was happening before her. How could her holy spear just break apart like that? The golden light died down, and a different person was now standing in front of her. He didn't look anything like Issei if his height and build was anything to go by, but at the same time, Raynare could tell that he was absolutely and without a doubt Issei. Even with his blonde hair and red eyes, he was most definitely Issei in some way. Then the male spoke. His voice holding authority far beyond anything she had ever experienced. You're the little fallen that wishes to harm my host. The male asked, clearly dissatisfied with the outcome. Raynare flinched. Just what was she feeling? The person in front of her felt human, but also at the same time godly. The aura covering his body was majestic. The power it gave out was outrageous. She could barely stand in front of this being. She couldn't afford to look weak. She was a fallen angel and she was going to see to it that she ends Issei's life, no matter what the cost. Every single nerve in her body was screaming at her to run as far away as she can. The power his aura itself was giving out was incredible. But she didn't listen to her own instincts. Her pride was too great for that. She put on a wicked smirk as she projected another holy spear in her hands. If that one didn't hit, then this one surely will. She then threw the spear at the male much faster than the previous throw. She had hoped that it was just a fluke. That by some random coincidence the first spear faded away instead of piercing through the male's body. But she was going to find out just how wrong she was. The male's red eyes sharpened as he watched the spear fly at him. A smirk of his own overshadowed his features as he placed his hand forward, his index finger pointing towards the spear. Worm. You dare attack me? The spear made contact with his index finger, but as it did the spear shattered like glass. Is this the best you can do? The male glared at her dangerously. He thought this holy spear of hers would be more powerful, but this was a joke. Raynare could only watch him with her jaw open. Her face full of disbelief. He not only stopped her spear one time, the second time he did it without any effort on his part. Even her superiors wouldn't be able to do what he just did. Destroying her holy spear with a single finger. This was unheard of. She now realized how big of a mistake she had made. Turning around, she made a run for it, her wings lifting her off the ground, but before she could lift off more than a few feet, a hand grabbed her leg, pulling her right back down. She turned around, a face of horror overtaking her features. The male that was a few meters away from her was next to her in mere moments. What the fuck? The male chuckled, somewhat amused. So, the mongrel realized how far I outmatched it and tried to make a run for it. He bursted into a full-on laughter. His eyes nearly tearing up as he did. Well, mongrel, the laughter stopped. You can't just give me a gift without me giving you one back in return. What sort of king would I be if I didn't reward my loyal subjects? His hand balled into a fist as he swinged his arm forward, his fist connected with her stomach before she could even see what was happening. Raynare could feel it coming, but could do nothing to stop it. She couldn't react in time, and she realized that even if she could, her arms would break apart from the sheer power of his fist. Please stop. Then it happened, the fist collided with her stomach, and her vision just went blank. She had lost consciousness before the fist even fully connected with her stomach, and maybe this was for the best. Otherwise she would be in loads of pain. The force of his fist created a shockwave that was powerful enough to tear the branches off the trees around them. Her body was lifted off the ground, the force of the fist sending her flying through the fountain and into multiple trees before finally stopping, leaving a trail of destruction along the way. The male would only stare at her half-dead body, somewhat amused that he could do this much damage to her with only a fraction of his power. Well, this was most certainly a waste of my time. He crossed his arms while thinking. Guess I might as well let that weakling back out. Golden light would cover his body once more, shifting his appearance back to that of a brown-haired boy. Issei fell down on all fours, still experiencing the near-death sensation. He was sure that he was about to die, however he didn't feel any pain. He then looked in front of him, his eyes widening at what he saw. There, in front of him was a woman with gashes and cuts all over her body, her clothes torn off, revealing her naked body. He remembered everything up to the moment she shot her spear at him. But what happened after that? His mind was foggy. Nothing made sense at all. How was he still alive? Why was he standing in front of the beaten woman? Had he done it? Was he capable of something like this? Of hurting a woman? He couldn't help but to turn around. He was going to puke if kept looking at her. The blood that was coming out of her mouth was making him feel uneasy. Then he remembered something. Right before he blacked out he heard a voice. A voice of a man. That must be it. Issei nodded. That man must have been the one who did this to her. Issei would look around, trying to spot the man but to no avail. Ding, ding. Issei heard a voice in his head. You've guessed it correctly, my useless host. Issei looked round again, but there was nobody there. Wow, I must be going insane. The voice in his head continued. Insane? Hardly. Issei was sure of it now. He was going crazy. Oh God, why have you cursed me with such bad luck? First my girlfriend tries to kill me, and now I'm going insane. The voice in his head got louder, more dominant. Listen, you little mongrel. I don't know what you think is going on, but I saved your sorry ass. Be grateful that I didn't let you die like the little worm you are. Issei jumped back, clearly not expecting the voice in his head to be so loud. Was he really not insane? Hey, ugh. Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? If the voice could, it would fassip him. Anger was clearly now mixed with its tone as it spoke. I told you, you're not going insane, you useless trash. Issei noticed the voice getting angrier and angrier. He didn't want to upset it anymore because he felt that if he did, not even the gods could save him anymore. So who or what are you? The voice found his question rather amusing if the laughter was anything to go by. Mongrel. You're not only a useless human, but you're also a wimp. How did I, the most powerful one, get trapped in such a useless host? Issei couldn't take it anymore. He kept being called useless over and over again. A tick mark appeared on his forehead as he yelled out. Well, I'm sorry for not being as awesome as you, your majesty. Please, let me do your fucking bidding. The voice was quiet for a moment and this made Issei fear for his life. He wasn't sure how or why the voice scared him so much, but there was just something about it that felt transcendent. Then the voice finally spoke. Oh. Maybe the host this time has some backbone after all. The voice continued confidently. Boy. You asked for my name, did you not? Well, listen and listen closely because I'll only say this once. My name is Gilgamesh and I'm the king of all heroes. I am the first and the true king of this world. Issei couldn't help but to think. Gilgamesh, he has heard of that name before. So let me tell you another interesting factor, boy. You're the holder of something truly special. The people of this world refer to it as sacred gear. Yours has a demigod sealed inside of it. And guess who that demigod is? Issei wasn't sure of it, so he just went with the most obvious answer. You? Gilgamesh laughed harder than he ever could. That's right. What happened right now is a clear demonstration of the sacred gear's powers. It allowed me to materialize myself inside of your body and use it to deal with that pesky fallen. I'm not sure how many of my powers you possess right now, but soon you'll gain unimaginable strength that will let you rival even the strongest beings in this world. And if you're too incompetent to deal with some of the beings you face, then I'll come out and show them a thing or two. I wouldn't be exaggerating when I say that I can easily fight two of the strongest gods in the universe with two hands tied behind my back. Somewhere in the dimensional gap, the great red dragon would sneeze. Someone is talking about me. Listen closely, you shouldn't reveal the fact that you have this gear to anybody because of its significance. This sacred gear was only used one time in all of history by someone I deemed worthy, and now I put my trust in you, a little maggot. Honestly, I have no idea what went through my mind when I chose you as my host, but let me make one thing clear to you. Don't tell anybody about your sacred gear. Just one little slip up and you could start another great war. People fear me and wouldn't rest until I'm eradicated from this planet. It's not as if I couldn't fight the whole world head on, but what would be the point of killing every single person? I would have no more fun. And before you ask, yes, I'm that powerful. Issei was somewhat confused. He didn't know what he meant by another war. Was he perhaps referring to the world wars? And what did he mean by sacred gears? He's never heard of this term. He was going to have to search it up on the internet. Okay, what's the name of the sacred gear that I possess? Gilgamesh would reply. World Breaker. Just as the name states, it has the power to destroy worlds. Issei's jaw dropped down, his head started hurting. There was no way he was going to sleep this off. The voice in his head just told him he had enough power to destroy the whole world. Oh God. Gilgamesh remained silent for a few moments, giving the boy time to adjust to the situation. Although, I doubt you'd ever have the power to destroy worlds without me controlling your body. There's only one thing in the Gate of Babylon that's powerful enough to do something like that, and I'm the only person that can use it. Now, I wonder what are we going to do with this one? Issei shifted his view to Raynare's body, her wounds gradually starting to heal. I have the perfect idea. His eyes were like glowing stars, and they obviously had perverted intentions. Gilgamesh could only laugh before crossing his arms in Issei's mindscape. This is going to be an interesting journey. Rias sat down on her chair, staring back at Akeno. She wasn't pleased with the outcome. He didn't summon us, which means he's dead. The sun slowly made its way up. It was early in the morning, and the golden rays of light were already making their way through the window of our hero's home. He was slowly opening his eyes, tired from yesterday's events. Actually, the word tired would be an understatement. He was utterly exhausted. Why was he so tired? Well, first of all, just the materialization of Gilgamesh took so much of his strength that he could barely stand that night. He was surprised that he didn't pass out right on the spot. And then, well. Flashback. Hey Gilgamesh, I think that I can't just bring her home for my parents to see her, especially with those wings. Can I? Issei asked, knowing the answer already. You will refer to me as the king of heroes until you get to know me better, peasant. Also, no you can't. Why not just kill her while you have the chance? Grab that stick next to you and hit her on the head as hard as you can. Or even better, I can give you one of my swords which you can use to slice her up. She did try to kill you after all. Gilgamesh answered, his voice cruel and ruthless. No way. Issei was at a loss of words. Gilgamesh talked about killing as if it was nothing. I mean king of heroes, sir. How can I bring her home then? That's better. Now there are two ways to do it. Either rip those wings out of her back, or you can spend the night somewhere else. Gilgamesh gave Issei a hint. Now it all depended on him to figure out what he meant by that. Issei would release his next words in the most sarcastic way possible. Oh, and where is that? I don't suppose you can materialize a castle right in front of me that nobody other than me can see. Gilgamesh smirked in Issei's mindscape. Well, I could. He replied uncaringly. Ahahaha. Issei laughed as loudly as he could. This wasn't one of those laughs that you did when you thought something was funny, quite on the contrary, this was the type of laugh that you did when something impossible just happened in front of you and you can't really believe it. He was completely dumbfounded by what he had just heard. Kid, remember when I told you that you're not insane? Well, let's just say that I could be wrong. Gilgamesh was debating whether to ignore his host at the moment or not. He didn't want to talk to a person that's insane or an idiot, and seeing as Issei was both, well, you could see where he's coming from. Anybody would react that way when you say that you're able to create an invisible castle. Like, come on. An invisible fucking castle. I was being fucking sarcastic. How is that even possible? Issei was slightly pissed off at how Gilgamesh interpreted his reaction. Oh? It's nothing special. Gilgamesh answered. Although I don't know how well your body will handle it. You might just pass out or even die. But then again, if you do, then I might find myself a better host. Wait. Issei yelled, trying to stop Gilgamesh from using the spell. But it was already too late. Gilgamesh wasn't going to listen to the kid, no. He was going to do whatever he pleased. In front of Issei was a sphere made entirely out of gold. Issei couldn't tell where it came from. 1 second it wasn't there and the next second it just appeared. It started to float before stopping inches away from Issei's head. Touch it. Gilgamesh didn't ask the boy to do it. This was a command. One that he wasn't going to take no for an answer. Issei, being the idiot that he is, just sighed and did as he was told, extending his hand forward before placing it onto the floating sphere, and then it started. Excruciating pain was all that Issei felt, but Issei's body didn't move, or rather it couldn't move. His hand was stuck on the sphere while his body completely frozen. This didn't stop Issei from screaming at the top of his lungs. This was pain like no other. It felt like his entire body was being crushed under the entire castle's weight, and the only thing the boy could do was hold on. He almost lost his consciousness, but then a golden energy started to flow out of his body, making the pain almost non-existent. Not bad, you didn't lose consciousness for 10 seconds. I might have found myself a decent host. Don't worry though, little mongrel, I'll use my own energy to supply it, seeing as you're not able to handle it. Giving Issei a bit of his power was all that was needed. The sphere filled up with energy in mere moments, causing it to explode and reveal what appeared to be a giant door. Once you step through here, there's no going out till morning. The moment you open the door you have 6 seconds to go through before it closes and seals shut till 7:06 am. Now you might be asking yourself why 7:06 am, so I'll give you a tip. It's a demon item. The moment the word demon was mentioned, Issei paled. He was going into a castle that was once owned by a demon. He was beyond scared. So scared that he barely noticed his lack of energy. The sphere took a lot out of him, a lot more than Issei would want to give. Hell, he couldn't even stand up anymore. Gilgamesh noticed this and gave him a little more of his energy, allowing Issei to move. He was going to go towards the door but then turned around, staring at the fallen angel. He was going to get his revenge on her after she tried to kill him. Walking closer to her, he grabbed her and carried her inside of the castle, closing the door behind him. Flashback. Those were the 2 reasons why he woke up feeling like shit. His entire body was in pain, and who could blame him after the amount of work Gilgamesh put him through. I bet that bastard is a sadistic fuck. He thought, not saying it out loud, but that didn't stop Gilgamesh from hearing it. Now that he thought about it, he was surprised to still be alive after all of that. The pain that he felt from that sphere was enough to give him a million heart attacks, and yet he didn't get any. Issei then felt the air chilling around him, making him automatically shift his view towards the fallen angel that was of course right next to him in bed. She was glaring daggers at him while he was frozen in place. He hadn't really thought this out too well. What would he do when she woke up and found herself naked with him in bed? Or better yet, since when did he have the balls to be naked with a beautiful woman in bed? Gilgamesh found this rather amusing, laughing like a maniac. You had balls ever since you were born. 2 of them hopefully. Issei was at a loss of words, so the fallen angel spoke first. You stupid human. What have you done to me? Where are all my clothes? Gilgamesh continued laughing, finding Issei's misfortune to be amusing. Issei then finally spoke, trying to calm her down. First of all, what's so different between a human and whatever you are? Second, I only slept with you and maybe grabbed your breasts 1 or 2 times, and third, well, I don't know what happened to your clothes. Raynare was furious. She had never been so humiliated in her life, and even by a lowly human such as this one. She couldn't clearly remember what happened between them yesterday. Maybe he drugged her, which made her reveal her true form to him. Anyway, this human had to die, now. His sacred gear was too dangerous, whatever it was. She formed a spear in her hand ready to strike when a hand grabbed her arm, stopping her from doing anything foolish. The hand that grabbed her was Issei's, but instead of his warm brown eyes, she was met with cold crimson red eyes, staring at her as if she was the insignificant one. His voice was like a mix between his own and Gilgamesh's. Don't try anything stupid, you worm, or I will gut you where you stand. His voice was cold and powerful, leaving no room for denial. Raynare froze in place. This voice, this power. She remembered everything that happened yesterday. Oh my god. She whimpered, barely keeping herself intact. She knew that going against this boy, no, this man, was a no-go. She would be obliterated in a moment. The spear in her hand faded away. Issei's eyes changed back to their regular colors, his voice now being normal and a bit unconfident. Could you please stop trying to kill me? I haven't really done anything to you. She glared at him, crossing her arms as she did. She was mad. Mad that she wasn't gifted with a sacred gear as this boy, mad that he could easily overpower her, mad that he could kill her with a single flick of his fingers. Hey, don't be like that. We just got off on the wrong foot, that's all. I'm sure that we could be really good friends if you give me a cha. He didn't get to finish his words as Raynare tackled him, sitting down on his stomach while grabbing both of his arms, pinning him down on the bed. Issei tried to push her off, but to no avail. She was a lot more powerful than he was in terms of raw strength. Hell, she was pushing his arms so deep into the mattress that the bed might break. He also noticed that all of the wounds from last night healed. Then Raynare finally spoke. You asked what I am, right? A black feather fell onto his face from one of her wings. I'm a fallen angel. An angel that was banished from heaven for succumbing to lust. Oh, well, isn't that the saddest thing you've ever heard? I should add this to my book. Gilgamesh took his book out, inside of Issei's mindscape, writing what the fallen angel had said moments before. If you looked closely on the cover of the book, you could see the title. The book was called The Life of Peasants. And Raynare continued. I'm really attracted to strong men. Issei could only stare at her in disbelief. She first wanted to kill him, and now she was attracted to him. What's wrong with this world? So Raynare watched him closely before leaning further down and whispering into his ear, her voice soft, and he swears he could hear a purr coming out of her lips. Call him out. I want him. The only thing Issei could do was drop his jaw at this development. God, why have you cursed me with this bad luck? The day was easily the most annoying day in Issei's whole life. He found out Raynare wasn't attracted to him, but rather to his inner gear, aka the person who beat her to a bloody pulp. Why would anybody be attracted to that egoistic fuck? Issei thought to himself, quietly enough for Gilgamesh not to hear him. Or so he thought. He could feel a glare like no other pierce his very soul, making chills go down his spine. After a lot of convincing on his part, Raynare gave up on trying to bring Gilgamesh out, only to pout at Issei. It's not as if she didn't like Issei. She really did adore him, but he most certainly couldn't compare to the other man. She got off Issei's stomach, but not before Issei managed to give her a soft kiss on the cheek, making her blush while at the same time cursing his human existence. Then as both of them got out of the castle, the door just disappeared, leaving them back in the park where all the fighting had happened. But something was wrong here. The entire park was in pieces last night, and now it looked brand new. Neither of the two thought anything of it, each going their separate directions. But of course, before Raynare could go anywhere naked, Issei offered her a jacket which she gladly accepted to cover herself with. Issei was worried at first that Raynare would tell the other fallen angels about him and his gear, while Gilgamesh assured the mongrel that something like that won't be the case. Apparently she'll forget every single memory about them within moments of leaving this area. Then as Issei got back home, a new surprise awaited him. One that brought a whole new meaning to the word headache. His parents ran to him, crying. Apparently some police officer showed up and told them how their son died and that his body has yet to be found. First his parents thought of it as some sort of sick joke, but when they didn't hear from Issei that night, since he never got home, well, let's just say things started to get really out of hand. They called everybody they could, but nobody had seen Issei. They were starting to lose hope, but then as they heard the click on the door, their eyes widened as they stared at their son, faces full of tears. Issei had little time to get ready for school, so he shoved his parents aside, giving them each a hug before going into his room and changing his clothes. He wanted to check if his hair was messy in the mirror, but what he saw horrified him. He didn't see himself standing in front of the mirror, rather he saw an image of a blonde-haired man with red eyes glaring at him dangerously. It took him a few good moments to get himself back together before glaring back at equal intensity. "You're the king of heroes or Gilgamesh, I presume?" Gilgamesh nodded his head. "Sounds about right, mongrel." Issei couldn't help but to fassip him. He was being as respectful to this man as he possibly could. After all, he did save his life not once, but twice. However, even his patience has a limit. "Listen, you stuck-up prick, don't make me come over to that side and punch yo." He stopped mid-sentence, feeling a cold object leaning onto the back of his neck. The edge of the object itself was sharp, and if enough force was put into it, then his head would be flying cleanly off. Gilgamesh would only smirk, revealing his dangerously sharp teeth through the edges of his lips. "You were saying?" Issei lost all the courage he had up to that point. It was either because of that devilish smirk or the metallic object that was slowly cutting into his skin, but Issei felt as if he needed to beg to survive, and that's what he did. "Please, almighty king. Don't do this to your loyal follower." Gilgamesh would only shift his view towards the weapon, making it disappear within an instant. "I'm teaching you a valuable lesson here. Don't talk back to someone who's stronger than you or it'll come back to bite you. The only reason why you're still alive is because I allow you to breathe. I could have killed you a long time ago, even while you were still a baby. I was watching you grow up. And while I do admit that you're a pervert with no real hobbies or any special skills, there are a few things that you did in your life that surprised even me. So I didn't allow you to die just yet because I want to see more surprises from you. Don't make me regret my decision." Issei didn't know whether to feel upset or happy. The apparent king of the world praised him. But he didn't have the time to figure it out right now. There were more pressing matters to deal with. "So, I've got to ask you something. The park was ruined yesterday. The fountain was destroyed, the trees were in shambles, but today everything was fixed as if nothing happened. And then there was the police officer that my parents spoke of. Don't you think that this death might have been planned by someone other than the fallen angel?" Gilgamesh laughed at the boy hysterically. His laughter was so loud that it made the entire room tremble as if there was an earthquake. Downstairs, Issei's mother sighed. "Honey, do you think he's okay?" Issei's father was going to reply, but was stopped as the room started to tremble. "What this? An earthquake?" Downstairs, the laughter finally died down, allowing Issei to stand back up and let go of his ears. Then Gilgamesh finally spoke. "You're smarter than I've given you credit for. Yes, that death was all planned out, probably by some very influential devil that was interested in you. And no, it wasn't for your looks. They could tell you have a sacred gear inside of you, and lucky for us, they don't know which one it is, so we're safe for now." "What? Devils are also real?" But Issei was confused. "Why did this devil want to kill me?" Gilgamesh pointed towards the pants Issei had just changed out of. "Put your hand into one of the pockets. There you will find a piece of paper with a weird symbol on it. That symbol would have allowed the devil to teleport to you once you were on death's door, so long as your wish was strong enough. And then the devil would have probably put one of those little mongrel chess pieces of theirs into you and reincarnated you into a devil, forcibly making you a part of their peerage. But that would have never worked, seeing as I'm the one that you have as your sacred gear." This was too much information for Issei to take in at once. Not because of the information itself, but the fact that it denies all the rules and logic that he had ever known. Devils were fictional characters that were always portrayed as the bad guys. God knows what sort of terrible acts he'd be forced to do once he became a devil. Thank God for Gilgamesh stopping it. He will be forever grateful to his savior. Or at least until he sees what sort of devils they are and their assets. Okay, Issei leaned his index finger onto his forehead, closing his eyes, thinking about where the devils could possibly be located. "A mongrel?" Gilgamesh gave him a questioning look, asking himself if the boy in front of him was trying to imitate an idiot or just was an idiot. "Not now, Gilgamesh, I'm trying to figure out the place of where the devils could be located." Issei unknowingly answered Gilgamesh's question. "You little idiot, isn't it obvious? They're at your SCH." Gilgamesh was cut off by Issei. They're located at my school. Issei exclaimed, proud of himself for figuring that out. He hadn't noticed Gilgamesh talking, nor did he notice that he was about to answer the boy's question. I'm going to kill you one day. Gilgamesh's face was full of anger. He didn't appreciate being cut off like that, especially when he was going to look like the smarter one if he answered Issei's question before he himself could think of the answer. But at least he was sure of one thing. His host did indeed have a functional brain. Issei ignored that last sentence, acting as if he hadn't heard it. Honestly, he was scared beyond reason. The most powerful being he had ever met told him that he'll end him one day. What's scarier than that? Issei was about to head for school, but was stopped by a sudden flash of energy in front of him. Standing in front of him now was the king. Issei was on his way to school, but he couldn't help but to feel that he was forgetting something. Something very important. He blocked the outside world as he started to think, not realizing that he had already arrived in front of the school gates. He was now at Kuo Academy, a previously all-girls private school that recently turned co-ed. And as he had arrived, all of the students stared at him, looking at him as if they've seen a ghost. Oh right. He finally remembered what made him feel so uneasy. Every single person in school probably heard the fake news already. The news of him being dead. Issei could only fathom him at this. Great. Pointing his middle finger towards the sky, he yelled. If there's any sort of god up there laughing at my misfortune, then fuck you. He yelled, loud enough for the whole school to hear. Gilgamesh would only snicker. Well, I won't take that as an insult, seeing as I'm not up there, but down here. Oh, and I am laughing. His words would quickly be followed by a maniacal laughter. Issei growled at Gilgamesh's comment, but stopped after remembering what happened last time. A sigh escaped his lips as he tried to calm himself down. Then he saw two people rushing towards him. Great, they're probably going to ask me stupid questions. He whispered to himself before coming face to face with two of the perverted trio, Mitsuda and Motohama. Rias was at a loss of words. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Was that really Issei Haidu? But he was supposed to be dead. Her eyes started twitching as he yelled at the sky. Akeno, am I seeing things? Akeno didn't look as surprised, or rather, she'd hidden it well. But a chuckle soon escaped her lips after noticing her king's reaction, which only made Rias glare at her eyes promising pain. Issei pointing his middle finger at the sky. I think we're both seeing things. Rias couldn't help but to giggle quietly. But this was most certainly an unexpected development. She and her peerage had seen the park, and they could only assume the worst-case scenario. The fallen angel had not only killed him, she had toyed with him and threw his body around, breaking it piece by piece. Rias had cursed herself for not following him that day. Luckily, that wasn't the case. But something bothered her. If the fallen hadn't been the one to cause all of that destruction, then who did? Akeno. We're going to have to bring him to our club and get some answers out of him later. Akeno would only nod at this. The perverted duo pulled him away from the gates and from prying eyes before bombarding him with their own questions. Issei. Where were you? We thought you were dead. Even the teachers said you were dead. Do you know how hard it would be to find your replacement for our group? Who would we frame when we peaked on the girls' kendo club? They pushed him against a wall, expecting answers from him, but they never came. To say that Issei was furious was an understatement. They heard he was dead and were more worried about peaking than about their best friend. Issei grabbed both of their collars, lifting them into the air. This would usually be impossible with Issei's frame and his strength alone. That is, if he didn't have some help. Now listen here. Issei said as quietly as he could, his voice fearful. The next time Issei's voice got louder. You ask me something like that. He was almost yelling. I'll show you just what it means to be deady, then let go of their collars, allowing them to breathe. At first, they stared at him, fearing him after what he had just said and done before realizing just how much in the wrong they were. How could they be so emotionless? Issei. They both stared at each other before nodding, apologizing at the same time. We're sorry. Issei wasn't expecting the sudden change of heart. Had they actually apologized to him after realizing their mistake? Oh god, this was going to haunt him in his dreams. Then Gilgamesh decided to jump into the conversation. I had followers that only used me for their own gain. Every time I returned from a dangerous quest, they would act as if they cared about me. But that was not the case. You know why they actually cared about me? They cared about their own authority in my lands. If I happened to die, then they'd of course lose it all. I didn't really mind it at first, but after a while it got rather bothersome. So I thought about it. What was the easiest way to resolve this? Well, it was really simple. I gathered them all in one room, no strings attached, and then you know what happened. Issei tried to make a wild guess. You killed them all. Gilgamesh would smirk at this, not because the boy was right, but because he was becoming more of a man. No. I asked them one simple question. Do you care about your king or his wealth? Now, I allowed them all to answer first, and most of them of course said that they cared about me, while only a few were blunt enough to admit that they cared about my wealth. I respected those who did and allowed them to keep it. However, the rest of them. Well, since they cared about their precious king so much, I made them go with me on a mission to slay one of the strongest beasts. Only a handful of them survived, and those that did were gathered back in the room. Do you know what I did then? Issei thought about it before giving him a quick nod. You asked them the same question again? Gilgamesh could only smile. It seems Issei was catching on. Yes, I asked them the same question. And while some of the weaklings did say that they cared about the wealth, seeing as they thought I would send them on a dangerous mission, others continued to say, no, exclaimed that they cared about their king. And at this point, I was sure of it. I had found those who were truly loyal to me and those who were dogs that lied. Then I proceeded to kill all of those who cared about wealth, leaving alive only those who care about me, the king. Issei gave him a questioning look. And what about the ones that were being honest the first time you asked and said that they cared about your wealth more than you? Gilgamesh crossed his arms. They never lied to me, so I allowed them to lie and keep all of their wealth and influence. It doesn't matter what you do, so long as you don't lie to your king. Wow. To say that Issei was surprised would be an understatement. You do have a heart. So, what was the moral of that story? Never lie. Gilgamesh would then change the subject. By the way, I seem to have picked up on quite a few devils. In fact, this school is infested with them. School was definitely interesting today. Every teacher and student would notice Issei and stare at him for a good moment or two before walking away. Even his classroom teacher, the one that never seemed to care about anything, was surprised with this outcome, if the wide jaw was anything to go by. I mean, how could he not be? He was sure he'd have to be the one to break the terrible news to everyone, and just as he started to do so, Issei walked into the classroom, cheerful as ever. Issei enjoyed seeing people's dumbfounded expressions. However, there was one expression that bothered him. It was the expression of one Yudo Kiba. As soon as he'd seen Issei, he turned around and ran as fast as possible. Lord of Heroes, was that perhaps a devil? Issei asked, hoping to get Gilgamesh's response. It didn't take long for Gilgamesh to yawn before responding. Oh, so you noticed. Also, call me Gilgamesh from now on. Yeah. That bastard is way too perfect to be a human. Look at him. He's got so many girls around him and he doesn't take any of them on a date. Well, I picked the first girl I met and took her on a date. You would have also been killed by the first girl you met and took on a date if it wasn't for me. Gilgamesh would have laughed at how idiotic this boy actually was if he didn't feel sorry for him at this point. Issei only sighed and nodded his head at this. Point taken. Also, did you just allow me to call you by your name? Mongrel, if I say something, then don't make me repeat myself. If I tell you to call me by my name, then do it. No questions asked. Do we have an understanding? Yes. Issei could only nod. The way he spoke, the intensity of his words. There was no doubt about it. That man was a king. School was finally over. After a long days of work, Issei was finally ready to head home and watch some TV or do anything that would be more entertaining than just sitting in class and listening to a boring teacher. Issei wasn't stupid, no. He was the smartest boy in school. Some of the girls liked him for his intellect, while others thought of him as a massive pervert that didn't deserve to live. As Issei packed his bag and headed out, he was greeted by a small girl with white hair at the school gates. Issei could swear he saw a pair of cat ears on her head for a moment before deciding that he was just seeing things that weren't really there. All in all, this girl was giving out a weird aura. One that no human could possibly give. Gilgamesh. Issei just wanted to confirm his suspicions. Oh wow. Issei could hear claps coming from his mindscape. You found 2 devils in one day. Not bad for a human that awakened his sacred gear just yesterday. Koneko wasn't sure what the boy was doing. First he was about to walk home by the looks of it, but then he stopped and stared directly at her. She was frozen at a moment. His eyes looked as if he was gauging her, evaluating her every move. All she heard from Rias was to bring him back to the old school building, and at the time, she thought it would be a simple task, but not anymore. She could also smell something from him. A divine aura was enveloping his entire body, but she couldn't tell where exactly it was coming from. Oh shit, Issei. You have to distract her. She isn't just a devil. She's also a Nekomata and has probably already noticed some of my energy. Hey there, Issei waved at the small girl that was glaring at him so intensively. Why are you glaring at me? Did I do something wrong? Perhaps I peeked on you while you were changing. If that's the case, then I'm sorry. She didn't allow him to finish his sentence as she sent a fist flying straight into his ribs. She wanted to knock him out now and ask questions later. But the blow never made it to its destination as Issei's hand intercepted her fist, catching it with little to no effort. She was surprised beyond words. She was a rook, goddammit. Even if she hadn't put all of her strength into that, he wasn't supposed to be able to catch it. Hell, no human should have been able to catch that fist, much less stop it. Whoa, that was a powerful attack, Devil-chan. Oh shy, he cursed himself for that slip-up. He not only stopped her fist, but he also revealed the fact that he knew that she was a devil to her. Koneko's eyes widened as far as they could before she jumped back, taking an aggressive stance. A hissing noise escaped her lips, and while it was supposed to strike terror into her foes, Issei only thought of it as a cute gesture of hers. "Mongrel, I take back everything I said about you. You're the biggest idiot I've ever had the pleasure of working with." But even with all of that said, Gilgamesh couldn't help but to laugh at Issei's misfortune. How was he going to get himself out of this one, especially with all of the devils that were about to surround him? He couldn't wait to see. A female stepped out of the shadows, her crimson red hair fluttering in the wind. "No, we're devils." Issei's eyes switched onto the newcomer before fast vaulting. The woman that had just revealed herself as a devil was none other than Rias Gremory, the most beautiful girl in school and also his secret crush. Issei was now at the Occult Research Club, located in the old school building. He was sitting on a sofa while being glared at by every single person in the room, well other than by Akeno. She wasn't exactly glaring at him. She was looking at him as if she was in hunger and he was a juicy piece of meat. That stare of hers sent shivers down his spine, but he tried his best not to look at her, denying her of any pleasure. To say that Gilgamesh was enjoying the situation would be an understatement. He was loving this whole development if the laughter was anything to go by. Issei would curse him for finding his misfortune to be so amusing if he wasn't surrounded by a group of devils that seemed to want a piece of him in one way or looking at Akeno, the other. Issei couldn't stand all of this silence. It was nerve-wracking. Had they brought him here just to glare at him, or did they want something from him? He wasn't going to take this much longer. Standing up, he glared at Rias, which he assumed was their leader, with equal intensity. "What do you want, devil?" His voice strong, not showing any hesitation. Rias flinched at this. She wasn't one to be taken by surprise, but the way this man talked, the way he showed no hesitation or fear towards her after hearing she was a devil. She wanted to know more about him. Hiba and Koneko were just about to grab him by the shoulder to get him to sit back down, but Rias waved them off before switching her view back to Issei, a much friendlier face covering her features. "You said that you could explain, so please, explain." The reason why Issei wasn't even a tiny bit scared of them was because he could feel it. He could feel all of their strength, all of their power. And while their auras were powerful, nothing could compare to that monster inside of him. If all of her peerage's combined power was a drop of water, then Gilgamesh's would be an entire ocean. Issei too followed suit, stopping his glare. She wanted answers from him, but he obviously couldn't give her any. He put on a smug look, followed by a chuckle. "What do you wish to know? Perhaps why the chicken crossed the road?" Rias fast vaulted at this, followed by the rest of her peerage. Was he toying with her? This made a tick mark form on her forehead as she stood up, pouting at him. "You know very well what I'm talking about." He did indeed know what she meant, but that pout of hers made her look so cute. He couldn't resist but to toy with her some more. "Yeah, I know. Listen, it was a rainy day, so I went under the first roof I could find. And it just so happened that it was located next to the girls' changing room. So I peeked through a certain window by accident and saw you. Along with that girl behind me, which seems to be looking at me as if I'm some sort of toy for her to play with." Akeno would only giggle at the accusation before sliding her tongue over her lower lip. "Swell, the cat that's sitting to my left," he addressed her in a way that would make it obvious that he knew that Koneko wasn't just a devil, but also an Ekamata. Everyone in her peerage would sharpen their eyes at this, including Rias, their glare never leaving Issei, waiting for him to finish. "As I was saying before you all started glaring at me as if I was your worst enemy, I saw all three of you in your panties that day, forgive me. I didn't think you noticed." A small blush formed on the cheeks of all three girls. Rias didn't know what to say anymore. She was beyond pissed off. Not just her, but her entire peerage. She tried to handle this situation as professionally as she could, hell, she even tried being nice to him. But he was just taking this whole situation as some sort of joke. She even tried her best to read him, but she couldn't. He was like a closed book that couldn't be opened no matter how hard she tried. "That's not what I wanted to talk to you about, however I'll act as if it didn't happen so long as you tell me how you stopped Koneko's punch." Her voice was a mix between anger and calm. She was trying her hardest not to just yell at him and demand answers out of him. She was even considering allowing Akeno to torture him till he'd given her the answer she wanted, but that was beneath her. Who do all of these dirty devils think they're glaring at? As funny as Gilgamesh found this situation to be, it was also angering him. He was contemplating whether to come out and show them their place. Decisions. Issei stared at Rias for a moment, then stared at Koneko, then back at Rias, his face showing no change as he did. "Well, she's just a little girl. I'm sure any boy my age can stop her punch." Koneko was furious. He not only stopped her punch, he also insulted her. Koneko wasn't one for pride, but when he insulted her, then he also insulted her king for choosing her. So he indirectly insulted the whole peerage by calling her punch weak. Seeing as Koneko was about to go off, Rias yelled. "Koneko. Down." which made Koneko freeze before leaning further into her seat and grabbing a cookie before crushing it between her fingers. After calming Koneko, Rias switched her sights towards Issei, a snarl nearly escaping her lips as she did. Listen. You're in an area that's under my jurisdiction. It's my job to know what's happening around here, so how can I do that when you keep toying with me and the orders of my superiors? Why, I bet if one of them came to question you, that you'd be too scared to think, much less answer their question. So please, while I'm in a good mood, answer my question. Issei would find the whole situation amusing. First she and her peerage were glaring at him, no doubt trying to intimidate him well other than a Keno. He honestly didn't know what she was doing. Then they were asking him questions while trying to act nice. And now they're threatening him. Issei would smile confidently before speaking as calmly as he could. You're wrong. Rias was clearly not satisfied with her answer. She was hoping to invoke some fear in him, not boost his confidence. How so? She asked, not thinking anything of it. Issei's smile turned into a smirk. Because, I know a man whose history is so great that others think of it as only a legend. His power so mighty that he can destroy everything. And if I'm not scared in his presence, then there's not a single being in the entire universe that can scare me. Rias could only jump back at this. The sheer power and confidence in his voice, she couldn't believe something like that could exist. Just who was this man that he was talking about? This man that he was thinking so highly of that he could compare him to the most powerful gods. No, comparing him to them was wrong. What he was saying is that they were beneath this man. Who is this man that you speak of? Rias asked, hoping to finally get an answer. Issei started at her for a moment, sighing. Sadly I cannot tell you. He doesn't wish his presence to be known to this world. Issei then stood up, walking towards the door. Well, if that was all Rias. Then I'll be on my way. He reached for the door handle but felt a sharp object planted on his neck, ready to slice through. It wasn't one of Gilgamesh's swords, rather it was the sword of Gremory's knight, Kiba. Since it was his sword, it had no hope at all to even pierce his skin. His skin could only be sliced through by an plus A rank noble phantasm. But you had not yet allowed you to leave, and as far as I'm concerned, you're better off dead. Rias would only fassip him at this. I'm sorry Issei, but he's right. I need you to sit back onto the sofa, we have so much to discuss. Her voice was cut off as Issei spoke. You don't know what you've done. You stupid idiot. Issei got quiet all of a sudden, not finishing his sentence. Then after a few moments, a sudden burst of laughter escaped Issei's lips. But there was something wrong about this. The voice, it was completely different from Issei's. Then the male turned his head towards Kiba, who could only widen his eyes before feeling a murderous aura. This is Kiba jumped back, sweat pouring down his forehead. He had just seen himself die a million times, over and over again in a single moment while standing next to Issei, no standing next to that thing. Oh, why do you run, little chick? I was just about to have some fun with you. The murderous aura that he was exerting covered the entire room, no, the entire school. Anything that stepped inside of this aura was promised death if the being chose to kill it. And as the being turned towards Rias, she could swear that she was seeing death face to face. His crimson red eyes watching her, scanning her, piercing her. She could barely breathe. She was aware of it. If this being chose to do so, then he could kill them all within moments, not even leaving their ashes behind. She summoned all the strength she had in her to ask what may be the very last thing in her life. Who know what are you? A god. End of the part 1. So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.